Um, I'm Father Martin Coffey. I'm a Passionist from Ireland working here in Rome. I spent many years as a missionary in Africa, and recently I've been in China. I still consider myself a missionary in China. But I've been given a responsibility to reorganize the formation of our young Passionists. We want to be able to, as it were, produce active missionaries who can show the compassion and the mercy of Christ in a world where there is so much suffering, so much heartache, and so much poverty. These days, a group of Passionists and their friends are gathered here in Rome for a meeting to discuss how we can live out the gospel ideal of working closely with the poorest of the poor, with the people who suffer most in the world. We do this because this, we believe, is the call of Christ to us today. How can we live the gospel? How can we preach the gospel if we are not close to the people who are in most need, the people for whom Christ came? Pope Francis recently has spoken very eloquently and very movingly about the need for missionaries. He tells us that the whole church is missionary by nature. And we Passionists are rediscovering that we are essentially missionaries. But what kind of missionaries? We must be missionaries with the heart of Christ. Again, Pope Francis gives us a profile of what a missionary would be like today. And the words he uses are very significant. He tells us a missionary must show tenderness, must show mercy, must be compassionate. And that gives us our agenda. We want, in the training of our young missionaries, to ensure that they are able to become people who show tenderness, who are merciful, and who are compassionate. I spent years in China, and the great Chinese teacher Confucius says, "I hear, but then I forget. I see, and I remember. I do, and I am changed." I think this can also be a useful principle for our formation. The classical Western way of teaching and of learning was about study, reading, silence, meditation. These are good, but we know they are no longer sufficient. Unless there is activity, unless there's active engagement, insertion, closeness to people, unless there is the active involvement and working with and for people, our young men may remain largely unchanged. They will, of course, have lovely ideas. They will, of course, have great ideals, but maybe they may not have the capacity to translate those ideas into action. I'd like to see our formation changing with long periods of insertion, where our young men are close to people, working with them, praying with them, crying with them, because it is to these people that Christ has called us, to be the friend, to be the companion, to be the servant, and above all, to show the love of Christ to the people who are most in need today. I'm very grateful to be able to participate in these few days of reflection and sharing, because they reinforce my sense that we must do something new in formation. We must give our young men the opportunity, yes, to read and to study, but more importantly, to be close to people, and to know at first hand how people are struggling, how people are suffering, the poverty they must endure. And if our young men can know this, if they can experience it and feel it, if they can have their eyes opened and their hearts broken, they will be the kind of missionaries that Christ is looking for today. The kind of missionaries that Pope Francis speaks of in his wonderful exhortation, Evangelii Gaudium, and the kind of missionaries we Passionists also hope to have in the future. I don't know that I can say anything else. That's a kind of a summary of my own vision and my own view and my own hope in the work that I have been given to reconstruct, as it were, or reinvigorate the formation of our young Passionists. Amen.